Let's talk to Ben, pronouns he, him, calling in all the way from the frozen wasteland of Canada, who says that he has a solution for the problem of evil, for an omnipotent, omniscient, omnipresent, omnibenevolent agent from which all other things come. That sounds like a tall order to me. Ben, you're on the line with Forrest and Seth. How are you doing today?
I'm doing fine. How are you guys?
Never had a bad day.
Doing well.
That's good. Okay. So I think the problem with the problem of evil is it assumes a paradoxical God. If you assume a causally restrained God, i.e., omnipotent, meaning you can do all things that can be done in all ways they can be done, know all things that can be known, and so forth. To be omnibenevolent, if you're restricted by causality, if the only possible realities you can create are ones with finite suffering and finite good, to evolve to a state where there eventually is no suffering and infinite good, then you could also be considered omnibenevolent. Am I on? Does that make any sense to you guys?
No. Sorry. I understand your premise, but I don't accept it.
Okay, why not?
Because at the end of the day, each individual person that is alive is experiencing either benevolence or evil, right? So if God is doing things to each individual person, each and every one of those actions is either going to be hurtful or helpful to that person. And they're either going to, it can be constructively harmful, like, say, for example, exercise. This person's really exhausted and tired and uncomfortable, but there's an overall benefit. And then there's non-helpful harm. Right? This person is just hurt. This person is being tortured. This person is suffering for whatever reason. And if you're going to paint yourself as all loving and all good and all kind and all these different things, then there should be no room at all for non-beneficial suffering, for suffering that is just purely harmful. There just is no place for that. And so for the excuse to be that the end goal is evolving to a point where there is perfect good, that all that tells me that this God is constrained in a way that an omnipotent God would not be. It is possible, logically, just theoretically, right, for this God to have made a universe where there is no need for that, and he can still accomplish whatever goals he wants to accomplish. If he can't figure out how to do that, then he's not all wise. If he can't do that with his authority, then he's not all powerful. So he chose, if he is all wise, then he came up with this as the best solution, which means he certainly isn't all good. If he is all powerful, and this is the only thing that he could make, then he either isn't all wise or he isn't all good. And if he is all good, then he certainly isn't all powerful. Otherwise, he would do a hell of a lot better than this.
Okay, so just because, like, if you can do all things that can be done in all ways they can be done, do you disagree with that being all powerful? Because it sounds to me like you said
it's so I would say all things, period. If it can't be done, then God would do it anyway because he's all powerful. That's the whole point of miracles, is the suspension of natural law for the edicts of this God or whatever it is. But if you want to say it has to be all things that are logically possible within the laws of physics, whatever, I'm willing to entertain that definition for the course of this conversation. And I still will not change much of what I said.
Okay, so it does not then logically follow that you could create a reality. If you can do all things that can be done in all ways they be done, that doesn't mean that there necessarily exists a way to be done without the suffering. So if that was your only option, and you were going to reward everyone who lived, let's say we're all individuals, I'm not saying we have souls, but if you have a essence or soul or whatever you want to call it, you live your life, you had to go through that. And then in the end, you get to be reborn. And that's the only way to get there, because you can only do all things that can be done in all ways they can be done. And you did it with the minimal amount of suffering required. Would that not be omnibenevolent?
So let me. I'm not going to dodge that question, but I have a follow-up that makes it important because I don't want to speak past your theology. Do you adhere to the idea, as I understand you're agnostic, but in terms of this Christian theology, do you adhere to the idea that we live in a fallen world and that humans are inherently sinful creatures, and that by repentance we then gain salvation, and that whole part of the dogma? Do you think that that is a necessary part of this discussion in terms of this theology that we're talking about?
I do not, and I specifically did that all the omnis that I wrote there, and didn't say Christian, because I think some Christians could believe in this situation I'm setting up, like the Seventh-day Adventist guy who doesn't represent the totality of Christianity, whatever. But I think that most Christians couldn't, because they do believe in like the all-powerful. They believe all-powerful means this God could do anything that could be thought by any thinking creature, including itself. So I think that it wouldn't work for most Christians. So no, I don't think the fallen world thing matters for.
So glad I asked, because I was about to go on a whole discussion about that. So if that isn't the case, and we're talking about a not necessarily Christian, just a theistic God that has all sorts of divine powers, is regulated by the laws of physics and logic and everything like that, cannot intercede with the natural order, can only participate in the natural order, and now must make a world in which eventually we get to a point of perfection, meaning non-suffering and all the things, and is trying to mitigate suffering as much as possible and have as little suffering as possible to get to that point. That's what we're talking about, right?
Yeah.
Okay. In that case, still no, but for different reasons. Because at that point, this God still created everybody and could still, in the laws of physics and blah, 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 could still do a whole lot more intercession into this world to make things better and to correct things that are better. If his powers are only limited by the laws of physics, then he could still operate within the laws of physics to make sure that 25,000 people don't starve to death every day. He could still operate within the laws of physics to end genocide. He could still operate within the laws of physics to stop pedophilia. He could still operate within the laws of physics to stop the people of his church, whichever church it is, from behaving so egregiously. Like, he could still do those things, and he still chooses not to, which means he is inevitably taking a passive role, watching all these evils happen in hopes that we will figure it out ourselves or do better upon our resurrections, whatever the hell that means. And I still don't think that's good enough. Seth, do you agree with me? Do you think I'm missing something?
No, I mean, these are mildly interesting discussions, but not really for me. I mean, I think to myself, if he's not an omni god, there are other gods throughout mythology that had limited powers. Okay, fine. But most of this is just academic for me. I mean, we're getting it's all a rehash of the Epicurean argument, which you already referred to here. And I think John Loftus wrote a great book called The God of Needless Suffering, and I prefer that over the problem of evil. I like to say the problem of needless suffering. And the idea that somehow the reduction of, I think even a reduction of suffering from what you and I see around us every day, the needlessness of so much of it, even a marginal decrease in that seems to me to be a no-brainer for any deity anywhere. So I'm not sure why reducing suffering would necessitate God's nature in any way. I don't know. For me, I tend to wink out a little bit, Forrest. And maybe it's because you're operating on a different level than I am. I myself think,
I'm so fucking brilliant. Yeah.
Well, no, I don't know. This might be your wheelhouse, and it's not mine. It might just be
the different level
frequencies.
is a significantly lower one. That's what it is.
No, I didn't mean that either. I mean, Ben, are you tracking with me? Like, you and I we're talking in the abstract here, but does this really relate to how people perceive God? How they frame God, the God they worship, they're obedient to, they fear or reject? I mean, how much practical application does this have?
I would say the practical application would be, my family, most of them are Christian. I was a Christian as a kid. What Christians tell me is like they need this God to survive the hardships of life, And it's to give a potential plausible way to still believe in a omnibenevolent, omni-creator who does care for you, does have a purpose, but then allows you to drop the fear of hell, of having to worship, and to focus on good and increasing good without. So if you need a God to do that, then you can have a plausible way to still have your belief in God for people who need that. That can help you reduce the fear and the worship. And then you can go like, okay, well, if this God is omnibenevolent and he's trying to get us to somewhere that has less suffering and more good over time, the best thing we can do to worship this God is to do more good and create less suffering. But
well, I'm going to reverse that looking glass just a little bit. I think you and I would agree that it is going to be harder to get people to walk away from the ideas of everything happens for a reason and pain in this life, bliss in the next. And there is a God that watches over us all that's going to come mop up and make us princes in the sky someday. And it's going to be harder for us to counter that if we aren't meeting human needs right here on planet Earth, right? When people are suffering, they tend to look up and they tend to cry out and they pray and they do all of these things, or if they have a body that's broken in this life, who wouldn't want to think when I die, I will be made whole again? When I've lost a child, who would ever chide someone for wanting to say, hey, I want to see my baby again? I mean, we understand the attraction of all of that. We understand why it reveals a critical need for us to remove suffering, to try to eliminate human suffering in this world. But the flip side of that is that on the church's side, the church has become Olympic level good at rationalizing why there is suffering in the world, right? It's either a fallen world because of original sin and shit's going to go down because we're all born with a sin nature, or God is maybe causing hardship to build us, build our faith, it's almost like the lactic acid in the muscle. It hurts now, but it's going to make us stronger in the end, kind of thing. It's another jewel in our crown. There are all these rationalizations for why suffering exists. So it's going to be awfully hard to pierce through those rationalizations for why there's suffering in the world. I myself would probably take a different angle if it was me, but I could easily be wrong.
That makes sense.
I mean, I don't know. That's all I got. I literally have nothing else. I have no. Unless Forrest wants to edit something, he wants to take sentences I said in a different context and edit those together for you, Ben.
I was expecting you to think it out. You're the thinking atheist. I thought you would really think hard about this and then come up with something really good.
It's not that I can't let it go.
Did anything Seth or I said resonate with you in any way? Did it make sense? Even if you don't agree with us, do you think that we've addressed your point?
Everything Seth said resonated with me. I do disagree with you that he could necessarily alleviate the suffering, given the equation has, a quadrillion variables or whatever it is. So we can't know this isn't the best way, given all the causal constraints and how everything interacts. And maybe we have to experience suffering so that we know what not to do in the eternal time, if there was such a thing. When you get to that point.
Let me ask you.
Are you saying? Oh, forgive me. Go ahead. I'll sit back.
Well, no, it's fine. I was gonna ask. We may have been asking the same thing. Do you think is it possible for you to here's the end goal of whatever the fuck, right? And now we take any one bit of suffering in this world. One guy murders some other guy, right? Is it possible for that guy to have freely made the choice not to murder somebody and we still get to the goal? And to make it even less hypothetical, pick a particular thing, right? Some assassination, some murder, some rape, some Donald Trump raping E. Jean Carroll. Was that necessary to get to the end goal? Or could Donald Trump have freely made the choice to not do that and we still get to the goal? Or do you think every single little bit of suffering is absolutely necessary for the goal. And that means it is the absolute minimum that God could possibly bring it down to. Is that what you're saying?
Yeah, the second part, like I don't think and people have a free choice. Like I don't believe in free will because I don't think determinism allows it. So if the starting conditions of however many variables was this that produced Donald Trump that made that evil thing happen, I don't think he was free to choose. And if those starting conditions were necessary to get to the end condition, then
okay, well then that changes everything, because if the end condition is everybody behaving properly and we have no free will anyway, then God could have easily made a world where we all just behave properly, period. We would have had exactly as much free will and nobody would have to suffer. So again, the ball's in his court, the responsibility's on his shoulders.
I still believe there's agency.
What's the difference?
The freedom part. So, like, if you are a contained system, like, so my will is constructed by determinism, but it's still like a contained system, and I'm in another contained system, the universe, the world. I can make choices based on my predetermined self within this world. But my will isn't free. It was predetermined, and it was predetermined because of the causal necessity. And why
your existence is predetermined, but we're addressing whether or not all of your actions in life are predetermined.
They are, because your choice, you have a preference, and you're going to choose what you're going to choose. But there's degrees of freedom. I guess the totality of freedom, that doesn't exist. You have degrees of freedom. It's a limited amount of agency that you can do, but you're always going to choose what you're going to choose.
In a world where God starts at the end and everybody's already perfect and good, we would still have degrees of freedom. We would still have no free will in a grander sense, exactly as you believe. We would still have the same degrees of freedom. We would just always make the free choice to do the right thing, right? That is the end goal.
Yeah.
Is that everybody is freely making the choice to do the right thing. So if that is a possible world where everybody is freely deciding to do the right thing, even though they have no free will of their own, then he could have just started there. He didn't need a 14 billion year experiment to end that place.
Not necessarily. You would have to, just because the end goal, you can't just start at the end goal because that's going to be the end goal. There's plenty of things you just have to go through the process to get to the end goal.
He literally is the arbiter of the rules. He makes the rules. He is the one who created the whole damn universe for this purpose, is to get to this perfect society, right? So why not just make the damn perfect society? Why have 14.5 billion years, or sorry, 13.8, pardon me. If with 13.8 billion years of mostly nothing, and then suddenly there's this one planet with millions of species coming in and out of existence in the most brutal ways possible, and then 200,000 years of insane human society full of rape, murder, pedophilia, genocide, war, famine, every bit of everything awful, most humans dying from abscesses in their wisdom teeth, rickets, all sorts of horrible shit, and then finally, somewhere down the line, a little after 2,000 years later, everybody decides they love him and everybody's good. He could have just made a good society if he has that kind of ability, but he didn't. He did it this way on purpose.
You're just assuming that. Maybe the only way to get to that perfect state is to go through the trial of experience the way it is. Like, there's nothing that says that he could just make you perfect. Maybe this is the way to make you perfect. This
Jesus
is
Christ.
the causally required way.
That God requires a planet that includes child rape to get us to a point of goodness, I reject that model. Is that fair, Ben?
Yeah, that's fair. You can reject it based on that. That's not a logical rejection. It's just preference.
Yeah. All right.
That's where we're at.
Very cool.
Just doesn't. This isn't good enough. This isn't good enough for any kind of God that's worth calling a God. That's kind of what I'm trying to get at here with you.
Okay, we can agree to disagree there. I think any amount of finite suffering that results in infinite good and no suffering is worth the amount of finite suffering, because finite out of infinite is such a ratio that it
So
doesn't matter.
last question then, or I guess last
you're going to
tiny
extend
string
you're
of
going to
questions.
extend the call, Forrest. Okay, fine.
Just for a second.
Extend the call for go ahead.
What Ben just said is really important, Seth. What you just said, Ben, is that any amount of finite suffering to get to that perfect state is worth it. And what I want to make sure you meant to say that. So do you think the end goal here, whatever the hell it looks like, is worth all this suffering in the world?
If it is infinite good experience and no suffering for everyone who had to suffer, it is worth it.
Okay.
I'm not saying this is the case. Keep in mind, I'm not saying this is the case. I'm saying this is a possible case.
Okay, well, I'm more interested in what you actually believe than what you just think might be theoretically possible, because that theoretical possibility is fucking gross. So if you do actually believe in that theoretical possibility, I would like to point out to you that it's fucking disgusting. If you don't actually believe it in the first place, there's no point in talking about
it. I believe it's possible. And if it were the case, I don't believe it's disgusting to have finite amount of suffering resulting in infinite good.
Let's work with that then. If that is indeed the case, then you would say that this is all worth it. If that is indeed the case, then you would call all of this necessary. And me personally, if there is a necessary part of a good goal, that necessary part also an infinitely good goal, I should point out. That necessary part is then, by definition, also good. Do you disagree?
I think I agree.
Right. And that's why I say it's fucking disgusting. Because Seth and I are here throwing up child rape and murder and genocide and starvation and all these things as arguments against the concept of a good plan. And you are saying, no, child rape and murder and genocide and starvation are good things. I'm glad they happen because the end result is this perfect infinite good thing that I don't know for sure is actually real. That's why it's fucking disgusting. Because at the end of the day, what you're hinging on here is something very akin to divine command theory, that as long as God commands it, it is good. As long as God wills it, it is good. And that results in, yes, I understand that these children in Gaza are starving to death. Yes, I understand all these priests raped kids. Yes, I understand every amount of suffering in the whole wide world. I like it. I want it that way. That's a good thing. I cheer it on because at the end of the day, that results in the magical fairy tale land that I want to exist. Fuck that, dude. And fuck any god that would use it to get.
That's not what I'm saying.
That's literally what you just agreed to.
No, so to just take the lactic acid thing. If I think working out is good to stay healthy, if someone mentioned the lactic acid is the good suffering to build your muscles, I can dislike the pain of it. I can wish that it wouldn't be necessary to get healthy by working out. I can dislike that part of it while still choosing to work out and get healthy. So I don't like any of those things that you just said. I don't want them to have to happen. I don't want them to happen. I think they should be reduced to zero.
Key note here, just a key distinction in your bullshit equivocation. Please tell me exactly which people chose to have genocide committed against them in order to bring about God's perfect world.
I never said.
Right.
First of all,
so he's speaking in the abstract. He's speaking in the abstract.
For you to say, I choose to work out even though I dislike the discomfort because I choose the goal is bullshit. Because children don't choose to get raped for God's glory.
I'll give you a better one. No choice. I was a kid. I was sick. I didn't like the taste of medicine. I had to take it because I had some throat thing. So my parents had to hold me down and force it down my throat, which is, I didn't choose that. But yet I was saved from possible negative effects. And after the fact, I say, okay, that was terrible. I don't want to go through that again. I didn't want to go through that. It sucked that I had to go through it. It was necessary.
You are beating your head against a wall to try to prove to me that the wall doesn't exist, Ben.
Nope.
Holding you down.
You're not dealing with me.
By your analogy, then God is the one holding these children down so that they can be raped so that he can have the world he wants. At the end of the day, we're right back where Seth left it. Any God who would operate in this system isn't worth calling a God. So we're right back where we started. And with that, I can see Seth's fucking done. I'm pretty grossed out. I'm going to move on to another call, but I appreciate you calling in. I hope you do it again sometime if you have something serious to talk about. Take care. Ugh. It's just gross. And like, it sucks because like, I feel like when we bring up fucking pedophilia and murder and all these things, it's kind of like that old internet rule that the first person to bring up Hitler, you know what I mean? Who's going to be the first one to call somebody a Nazi and all that shit. But really, when you're talking about when you're talking about the whole fucking universe, when you're talking about the arbiter of all that is good, when you're talking about the one guy in control of every fucking thing, then yeah, every bit of everything as the most evil thing you can think of inevitably falls on that person's divine shoulders, and they need to be held responsible to it. They need to answer to it. And if the
Ben was mostly just navel gazing,
take your medicine. Fuck me, dude.
Ben was mostly just like, well, what if there was a scenario where it was all relative, and even the most heinous, most horrifying, most torturous things that happened, and the aggregate of all those things still produced an ultimate infinite perfection with no suffering, then it would all be worth it. But he said he didn't believe it. He just said the scenario in the abstract makes sense. And he took the time to call us to argue that. And I don't really understand why. And I literally could feel people falling off. I felt people that were literally falling off of the YouTube channel. They jumped to the top of the channel and they purposefully just leapt off of the channel. And now they're there. And what they need is what I have brought to the table here is an emotional support nacho. So that's how I'm recuperating from this. I'm just call from Battleship. Anyway, I'm all yours,
on
brother.
nachos to stay sane.
Eric, do you want to learn how to Mongolian throat sing? Check this out.
No,
you try.
No, keep that shit to yourself. Don't hear it.
Anyway, thanks for watching that clip. Patreon.com/calltheline is where you could support us. And maybe you should subscribe and like the video because it was a killer video. Or maybe it wasn't. Was it a Forrest video? If this was a Forrest video, you don't have to click like. If it was an Eric video, go ahead and click dislike.